Thank you for joining us on 1460 WVOX, America's great community radio station where many different voices are heard in the land. Opinions expressed on our community and open line programs are not necessarily those of the station, its management, or sponsors. As always, we're privileged to amplify the voice of the people here on Vox Populi 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com for you and yours.
The bureaucrats and City Hall types are not exactly thrilled when you take to the airwaves to vent on 1460 WVOX.
1460 WVOX. Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses with my co-host John Sharan and Ardina Seward. I have my headphones.
Sounds a little creaky there, Peter.
We hear you, Peter.
I lost my voice this morning doing nothing more than coughing. Anyway, hi, Ardina.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Sharan.
Good day, sir. Welcome.
Are any of you going to the Yankee-Red Sox game tonight?
No, I think I'm going to miss that one.
How about you?
No, I'll be watching on the tube.
I'm going.
That's why God. That's why God created TV.
Neighbors. It helped you the last time.
And Emily, because she works for a big law firm, one of the vendors got her legend seats. So she says to me, "I can have sushi tonight, and everything is free. It's not free for somebody; it's just free for you."
But how are you going to holler if you better regain your vocals between now and then?
I'm rooting for the Red Sox.
He's rooting for the Red Sox.
Oh.
When did we start eating sushi at baseball games?
Baseball games, it's right, Peter.
Oh, by the way, in case any of you are
when they're able to charge $20 for them, that's when.
Well, they probably charge a lot. I have no idea what they charge. I would never eat sushi at a ballpark, nor would I eat sushi
at a gas station.
I wouldn't eat sushi in Southwestern Ohio either. Matter of fact, I don't think anyone who goes to Southwestern Ohio should go without bringing their own food, because the food at in and around Oxford, Ohio, was completely inedible. And I think maybe that caused the cough, which now I'm suffering with and you're having to listen to. Anyway, we have a guest who has been on before, probably around 5 or 6 weeks ago. Lloyd Truffleman, how long ago was your candidate here?
No comment.
That's really, really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Frequent flyer.
By the way, who is your... if you're not going to help me, you want to tell me who your guy is? Because I forgot who he is.
Who, this fellow right here?
Yeah, get closer to the mic.
Pete Harckham, who is former Westchester County legislator and majority leader.
Is he related to Pete Rose?
I don't think so.
Okay, because all those Pete's. Wait a minute, I'm
right.
Forget about it. I'm getting away from the slash.
Are you related to Moses?
My great grandfather's name was Moses.
It's Moses squared. Anyway.
Does he suppose indubitably?
Anyway, Pete,
no.
Hey, we have an election coming up in 30 days here. Let's,
Let's segue.
Get focused. So, Pete Harckham, you're running for
New York State Senate in the 40th District.
And you're running against?
Senator Terrence Murphy, who it seems could not be here today.
I'm looking at the chair where he's supposed to be. Terrence, looking good, my man. Thank you so much for coming. You don't have to speak. Just nod. I mean, nod yourself awake, not asleep.
Peter, doesn't he appear a little thin to you?
We'll just change his name to M.I.A. Murphy, right?
Yeah, Mia.
How's that, M.I.A. Murphy?
Like the actress Mia Sarah. Anyway, let's
Mia Murphy.
Slapstick. And Pete, I would like to ask you, because we're in, as Lloyd said, not with a scalpel but with an axe. Wanted to get to what's going on with you here. What is going on with you here? What makes you a special candidate? Because to beat an incumbent, you have to have something special and unique. What is your uniqueness?
Our uniqueness is the people understand that our current senator is out of touch with their values, and I'm fighting for Hudson Valley values.
No, that's political speak.
No, it's not. It's not, because when you look at what's going on in this nation and what you look at what's going on in New York State.
John's a Republican, by the way.
Conservative. People in the Hudson Valley, by and large, they're pro-choice. They may be for the Second Amendment, as I am, but they want common sense gun control. They want victims of abuse as children to have the right to face their accusers. All of the things that Senator Murphy and the Republican majority have opposed and blocked, especially in light of Kavanaugh. We need to codify Roe v. Wade at the state level, which is something that New York State Republican majority and Terrence Murphy have blocked. With Kavanaugh, pre-existing conditions from the Affordable Care Act are now on the chopping block at the federal level. We need to, at a bare minimum, codify that, let alone discuss things like single-payer universal health care. The Senate Republicans had blocked that.
We spoke about all this.
So what it is this is a highly educated and motivated electorate. And they're tired of the status quo. They're tired of the corruption. They're tired of the gridlock. And, this may not be one of the sexy campaigns that's been identified in the state, but it's resonating with people as we go door to door, as we make our phone calls. We are having extremely positive interactions because people want change, and they're tired of people not reflecting their values who are in office.
Don't people realize, though, that if you do beat Terrence Murphy, that you may be the turnkey to a changeover in
and they understand
party?
that. They do understand that. And the ones who don't, we're educating, because it is one seat that we need, and we can do it right here in Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess counties. We don't need to go to Brooklyn to find a race. We don't need to go to upstate to find a race. So Democrats who want a race, who are looking to have an impact and flip the Senate from Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess, we have a race right here.
It sounds to me that the Democrats are going to be behind you. I mean, there's a lot of energized Democrats, but for you to go over the top and win this clearly, you need some Republicans to switch as well.
And we need the independent voters.
Absolutely. You always need the independent voters.
The registration
let's talk about the Republicans for a couple of minutes. And then when we come back, John and Ardina can take over. Are you having conversations with Republicans?
We are. And you mentioned you were in Boehner country when you went back to school. John Boehner said a couple of months ago there is no Republican Party. There's only the party of Trump. So what has become of the Rockefeller Republicans? The Hudson Valley was a proud home.
Or the Pataki Republicans.
And they are looking for a place to land, and they are open to discussions with us. Because what we're proposing is not that radical. Codifying Roe v. Wade when 75% of New Yorkers are pro-choice is not a radical idea. Passing a red flag bill to petition a judge to temporarily remove the firearm from someone who's deemed to be a threat to themselves or others, that's not a radical idea. Extending the statute of limitations for child victims is not a radical idea, and Rockefeller Republicans are relating to those things.
And how many of them do you think you've spoken to?
Hundreds, if not thousands.
Well, shouldn't that... I know that there's polling being done now. We talked about that. But that should easily put you over the top, because the independents, at least in 2018, sound like they're more skewing towards... we'll get back to that when we come back. This is Westchester Eye on the radio, on WVOX and WVOX.com. When we come back from this long commercial break and Fox News break, call in 636-0110. We'll be right back.
$14.60 WVOX.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome to Westchester Eye on the Radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Sharan along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and our special in-studio guest, a timely guest since we are getting near elections, is Peter Harckham, Democrat running for the...
He goes by Pete.
Well,
so do you, but you're not running for office.
No, he never goes... Our co-host never goes by Pete. Trust me on that. But Peter Harckham is here in studio with us, and he's here telling us a little bit about what's going on in the time leading up to the election. And let's get right into some of the issues here. I know one of your positions is that you want to try to restore the state and local tax deductions that have been eliminated on the federal level. What's your plan involving those?
Sure. Right now, there is one lawsuit that's been brought by the executive branch of the state against the tax law itself. There is another lawsuit that's being prepared by Assemblywoman Paulin and Assemblyman Buchwald that goes to the standing of the charitable foundations that were set up under the new tax law, so that New Yorkers would have a workaround as deductions in lieu of the loss of the state and local deductions. The IRS, at prodding by New York State Senate Republicans, mind you, has ruled that those are illegal. What they're saying in the lawsuit is that the IRS doesn't have standing on this issue.
My understanding is that there are other states around the nation that have instituted similar things. I have not heard that they were ruled illegal. Is this a situation that...
Exactly. I think that's one of the concerns that will be addressed in the lawsuit. So in the Senate, I think we need to take a strong look at getting behind that lawsuit as well. That way we're on parallel tracks to address the bill.
Speaking of taxes, Murphy has moved to repeal the star exemption, and for people to have to reapply for the star exemption. What will that do to taxpayers who get a reduced bill based on their right to the star exemption?
It will be huge. We have enough bureaucracy in our lives to begin with. If you're a senior or if you qualify for STAR, but especially the enhanced STAR as our seniors, property taxes are crippling. They're a regressive tax for people on fixed income. So you should, once you're approved for STAR, you should stay approved unless your economic situation changes or you move, because nothing else is changing in your life. The other thing that's going on in the 40th Senate District is, if you look at the Brennan report that just came out on school funding, 40th District schools are underfunded by $78 million. $78 million. And if you look at Long Island, they don't have that issue. And that's because of the strong power base of Senate Republicans from Long Island. When I was on the county board, Long Island Bus Service, Nassau County Bus Service, which is totally comparable to Westchester, used to get 10 to 12 million more in state aid than we got here in Westchester. And that's just based on politics.
But based on what you just said, wouldn't that be an argument Terrence Murphy would make, that I can bring home the bacon, the Republicans can bring home the bacon because we're in charge and I can get you more money than has been gotten before? Even though he's still, he's been our senator for a while and hasn't done that. But isn't that an argument that he might make?
No, he can't, because he hasn't. He hasn't. He's been a senator in the majority for 4 years, and he likes to run around with checks, the ceremonial checks for grant items that are normally in the budget anyhow, and take credit for these, items like basketball parks and things like that, which are nice. But I think people would much rather have $78 million worth of equality in school funding. And that goes a long way to holding the line on property taxes.
And that's even beginning, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to also be impacting towns such as Bedford and Mount Kisco because of the influx of new immigrants in those areas.
That'd be Portchester too.
Well, probably Portchester, but the anomaly is you don't think that Bedford residents are going to be screaming because now they have to build more schools and they have to have ESL programs because of the influx. There's an overflow apparently from Mount Kisco to kids that are being funneled into the Bedford school system, and you don't have to anticipate the same crisis that they have in Yonkers. But this has been something that's been growing over a period of time since Murphy's tenure.
And Sleepy Hollow and Brewster, and it is an issue, and it's one that we have to address. And although it's an issue that is the making of the federal government, as we remember, immigration is strictly a federal issue, and under this president and this Congress, they have not addressed it. In fact, what was a bad system, they've broken and made worse. Ripping children away from their parents at the border is just humane under any definition. That's not even Republican or Democrat. But as a parent, I'm outraged that that's happened on our soil, in our name, and those children some of them were held in Lincolndale, which is in Somers, in Mr. Murphy's district, and he remains silent. So as the senator from this area, he should have spoken out on that issue, and as a parent, he should have spoken out on that issue.
Another thing that I'm curious about, which is somewhat of a paradox, that Murphy seems to have remained silent. Murphy was endorsed by the PBA. He was endorsed by the AFL-CIO. He was endorsed by a number of unions. Now, as you are aware, the Janus decision was backed by the Republican Party. So how does that work? Why endorse a candidate whose party has basically authored legislation that is working against them?
If I were a labor union, I would, in this climate, I would not endorse any Republicans. When I was an incumbent in the legislature, those same unions endorsed me. I come from a union family, and I have a very good relationship with the rank and file. This was a case of politics where they didn't want to anger a sitting incumbent. So the safe thing to do is to endorse the incumbent. We have many members of the rank and file of all of those unions. We've been endorsed by United Auto Workers, by 32BJ. We have a lot of labor support. And if you look at the issues beyond, just the rank and file jobs issue, unions are very much involved in social justice, higher minimum wage for everybody, universal health care, and Murphy is nowhere on those issues.
Well, we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio, and if you have comments or questions out there, you should call in to 1-636-0110, and we always say make it into a dialogue, not a monologue. We are here with Peter Harckham, who is the Democratic New York State Senatorial candidate running up against Terrence Murphy, a Republican incumbent.
In the 40th district.
In the 40th district. Thanks, John, for reminding me, in the 40th district. So don't go far from that radio, because we have more to talk about. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio, and your ears on the radio, too. See you in a few.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
We are back. You are listening to Westchester Eye on the radio, and I'm going to borrow a line from a gentleman here in the studio. We are screaming and streaming.
Who's screaming?
You.
Well, you might be if you didn't lose your voice.
We're screaming and streaming live at Westchester Eye on the radio, and our guest here today, who is not screaming, is Peter Harckham, who is the Democratic candidate for New York State Senate. Elections coming up, so I'm not going to lecture you all about voting. But
Ardina, isn't he preternaturally calm?
He's preternaturally calm, which is the calm in the storm. And we're going to get back to the issues, because there's so much more to talk about. You said that you were pro Second Amendment, correct?
Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean common sense gun safety, like the red flag bill, are mutually exclusive. We respect people's right to own firearms, but the red flag bill, if Maryland had the red flag bill, the woman who was stalked by the newsroom shooter said that gentleman was the angriest human being she had ever met, and went to the police several times, and they said beyond the restraining order, there was nothing they could do. If they had a red flag bill, they could have petitioned a judge, said, Your Honor, we feel this person is a threat to him or herself or others. The judge could have made a determination to remove the shotgun, which he purchased legally with a background check, as I've read. And those 5 journalists might be alive today. And that's how we can prevent mass shootings without infringing on people's Second Amendment rights.
Well, that and things like, if you're on the no-fly list, why should you be allowed to have a firearm?
Yeah. There are common sense and the bump stocks, things like that.
But Murphy was endorsed by the NRA. So where does your position vary
It's vastly different. He wants to overturn the SAFE Act, which New York State wisely passed after Sandy Hook. I strongly support the SAFE Act. He wants to overturn it. In my first 30-day agenda is the red flag bill. That's how strongly I believe in it, and he opposes it. And the Senate Republicans have been blocking it. So just because someone believes in firearms doesn't make them an NRA supporter or on the fringe of that issue. There are many people who own a firearm for responsibly for either hunting or target shooting.
Business owners.
Protection at home, and they should have that right. But that doesn't mean we can't, as a society, make smart policy choices to keep our kids and our public spaces safe.
Now, we're looking at a situation, this is a midterm federal election. Those tend to go in favor of the party that does not have the White House. And there's a large number of people who tend to vote a straight ticket. How much do you think the Democrats are going to gain at the state level in this election?
I think we're gonna pick up several seats. What we saw in the primary, and being in a primary, we saw it firsthand on the ground. We saw how passionate Democrats were. In Dutchess County, the voting was 400% higher than similar primary several years earlier. So Democrats are motivated. People who were not targeted on anyone's radar, people who had never voted before, people who had never voted in a primary, were so angry they just wanted to come out and express their anger by voting. And nothing the president is doing is going to calm those people down between now and Election Day. So we know the Democrats are motivated, and we know a good chunk of the independent voters are motivated. They represent about a third, about 30% of the electorate, and that's where the election is going to swing. So it's right now the business of communicating with them a door at a time, a phone call at a time.
I hate to racialize politics, but how do you convince white Republican women that they should come to your side?
It's actually not a difficult sell because many of them believe in gun safety. Many of them believe in a woman's right to reproductive health. Many of them believe that victims of sexual violence as children should be able to face their accusers in the court of law. These are all common sense measures that a lot of people agree with, and Senator Murphy and the Senate Republican majority have been blocking. But in the face of Kavanaugh, many Republican women are just as angry as Democratic and independent women, and same when it comes to mass shootings and gun violence. They've had it up to here. So they are open to this dialogue. There's a certain percentage of Republican males who are strongly in the president's camp, and I'm sure strongly in Mr. Murphy's camp, and we're not going to move those folks. But there are a lot of persuadable people who are at least open to having the conversation, and that's all you can ask as a challenger.
But the Kavanaugh issue has opened up an interesting divide. It is loyalty to the party contrasted with women's rights, contrasted with sexual harassment, or in this case it was beyond sexual harassment. And I think that a lot of women are conflicted as to which side to believe, because on one hand you want to empathize with Dr. Ford, but on the other hand, to play devil's advocate, there's been the cry of so much Kavanaugh bashing. So for a white Republican woman who's listening to this, what would you tell her?
I think we need to stand with women. We need to believe women. I was with Planned Parenthood and Lieutenant Governor Hochul last week, and the whole theme of the event was standing with women because women were so outraged. It wasn't an event for Democratic women or independent women or Republican women. It was for women. And when there's a spectacle like there was. And I think part of the outrage about Kavanaugh is not only just the sexual harassment, but his whole demeanor as someone who's supposed to sit on the courts, the highest court of the land, and be an even arbiter of justice, spewing about left-wing conspiracies from Hillary Clinton and hey, Senator, you want a beer? You like beer? I mean, that's not how I have, in my lifetime, have ever viewed a Supreme Court judge. You know, even someone as controversial as Antonin Scalia, and was known for his conservative views and was not widely liked in liberal circles. He conducted himself in a manner as a Supreme Court
but he
judge.
was not personally attacked, and none of the other people were personally attacked. You go back to Clarence Thomas was the last person who was personally attacked, and I totally understood where Justice Kavanaugh was coming from in this instance. This was not a case where, you know, people say, well, he doesn't have the demeanor of a jurist. Well, the reality is, if you have personal interest in a case, you don't serve on that trial. No judge is asked to do that sort of things. They generally recuse themselves from situations.
But how many instances in recent modern history has a Supreme Court justice recused himself? You know, it's one thing in our local town courts.
That's exactly right.
You know, it's
so the point is, when you look at the cases that he has tried, has he done this before? The answer is no. I mean, the bottom line is, this was a personal attack on him, had nothing to do with the decision in a case that he had done. In his lower case decisions, all the ones he's done before, there is a record out there that points out that he has not only stood for both sides. I mean, he's represented them based upon how he saw the Constitution, but he never mistreated people in terms of the way that he did during this hearing. And he did so in this hearing because it was personal against him, and he felt that way.
Well, we can disagree on what his motivations were. I think if you're a candidate for the highest office in the land, you don't conduct yourself that way. And to me, that was the hallmark of somebody who is not stable. And that was the way I saw it. And we're all entitled to our opinions.
I saw it the same way. And the fact is that, John, you can't always predict future behavior on past performance. You know that as well as I do.
Well, then what's to stop any nominee from being criticized and saying, I don't think he's stable?
But this particular person, Brett Kavanaugh, seems to have issues in his personal background that people found extremely uncomfortable. There have been Democrats who've gone before the Supreme Court committee. I mean, why was Robert Bork turned down?
Robert Bork was a racist.
Is that the only reason why?
Isn't that enough?
I don't know if that's. I mean, do you guys remember the Bork hearings? Or was it just race, or was it also his demeanor and many decisions he had made as a judge, and his comportment, and the fact that he was willing to do Nixon's bidding, and we didn't want a Supreme Court justice who just did what the president wanted to do? That's the reason he did not become a Supreme Court justice. He was willing to carry the water for the President of the United States.
He was a racist.
But you can stick to that. But the fact of the matter is that the reason why the Senate voted against him was in part because of his close connection to Richard Nixon. Anyway, we're going to be going to break now. When we come back, we're going to have Pete Harckham with us on WVOX and WVOX.com. This is Westchester Eye on the radio.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Westchester Eye on the radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. And today, we're focusing exclusively on Westchester because our guest is Peter Harckham, Democratic candidate for Senate in the state of New York in the 40th District. And Peter, we were talking about some of the issues that are out there, and one of the things that I think a lot of people are concerned with it when they look around their various communities, we see a lot of, vacant storefronts, vacant businesses, vacant opportunities out there. The Amazon effect seems to be
Absolutely.
just dominating everything out there. What can government do to try to resurrect and to rejuvenate what goes on in the local community?
That's a terrific question, and we need to focus like a laser on our downtown main streets to get pedestrian traffic down there, because you're right, they can't compete with Amazon or the big box store chains, and our family businesses are vanishing. In many cases, it's infrastructure. You know, what brings back a downtown is foot traffic, housing, restaurants. There are many municipalities north of Mount Kisco that don't have sewers. They're on septic systems, so they can't get health water permits from the health department because they don't have wastewater capacity.
Well, that same issue exists in Greater T-Town.
Yeah, exactly.
Below Mount Kisco.
Yeah, so it's throughout the district, Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess. We need first a robust and targeted investment in infrastructure for our downtowns. You look at parts of Cortland where they're trying to revitalize or bring in new development to offset some of the loss of tax revenue from Indian Point. And until there are sewers in there, businesses and industries are not going to look at that seriously. So that's step number one. And then the second is let's find money for our municipalities to improve the experience, streetscapes, lighting, plazas, things that bring them in, and then help them with the marketing of whatever the hook they have. Are they a restaurant area? Are they a historic district? Tie them into the state's I Love New York and historical sites, or I Eat New York, all these different things. The marketing tools are there, but we need to focus both on the infrastructure piece, the aesthetic piece, and the marketing piece. And you have to have a state senator who's focused on that.
Where's the money come from to do it?
There's existing money. There are existing grant pools. And if you go through the consolidated funding application, it's there. And when I worked doing both community development block grant work and also on the bridge, I stayed as the liaison to the Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council. I think the fund is something like $300 million for wastewater infrastructure. But you know, municipalities need money for the assessment studies. You just can't get the money without the feasibility study being done. And, some of the smaller towns with a few thousand people, that's real money. So you need to take the time, work with them one-on-one, and take them through the process step by step.
What can be done to streamline? You mentioned the feasibility studies. I know many people have had major projects that have been derailed by these things that go on, and they don't ever seem to have an end to them. What can be done to streamline that process?
That's a very good question. We need to... Because in many cases you have different overlays. You have your local planning and zoning, and in many cases then you may have state DEC, you may have New York City DEP. A lot of this is in the New York City watershed, and they put limits on a lot of things. So and
they own a lot of land. People forget how ingrained New York City is in Westchester County. I mean, along the train tracks, there are MTA police all over the place, and the DEP police, who used to have the entire watershed, used to have 5 squad cars back in 1993. Their footprint has grown as well, and we all have to be aware that New York City plays a massive role in Westchester.
Well, and because of the reservoirs, the eutrophication you see, the watershed is now in an enhanced phosphorus reduction zone for the MS4 permit. So that comes in 2 forms: septic waste and also runoff from stormwater. And so the municipalities are charged with capturing stormwater and removing phosphorus, essentially doing what our wetlands used to do. It's inordinately expensive. Phase 1 was over $500 million for the 10 northern towns in Westchester, which was more than twice their annual budgets combined. So we need to also have some, not regulatory relief in the scope of we want to make our environmental regulations weaker. They're there for a purpose, but we need to find funding to go along with that. It's not fair to have an unfunded mandate for a small municipality to say that you need to correct a problem that's in the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars.
Do you really think that New York State, even reshuffling government, is going to have $500 million for 10 municipalities in Westchester County. I find that difficult to conceive.
Well, they've been doing it. They've been doing it for years. It's more aspirational, but there was money when I was on the county board. We got them $10 million from the watershed funds. New York City DEP kicked in some money. DEC kicked in some money. We actually had a very good working group when I was on the county board of DEC, DEP, county, the local municipalities.
Are you talking local, DEC, or are you talking state?
State is DEC is the state,
and DEP is also
and
state.
DEP is the city.
DEP, yes.
And then, but also the county Department of Health, because they're the ones who regulate the septic systems. So we had a very good working group for several years, and we were collaboratively able to address these issues.
We are running near to the end of our hour, and I think what I'd like to do, you guys agree, I'd like to hear your elevator pitch, because you have, as Lloyd reminded us, 30 days left before the election. Give me a minute of why Pete Harckham matters to the people of Westchester County and the entire state of New York.
Because if people are tired of the corruption, they're tired of the gridlock, they're tired of people in government not reflecting their values, and we're fighting for Hudson Valley values, which is a broad spectrum from liberal Democrats to Rockefeller Republicans, common sense things like codifying Roe v. Wade at the state level for protections of reproductive health care, red flag bill, common sense gun safety, not infringing on the Second Amendment, but protecting our kids in open spaces, and also the Child Victims Act, which gives voice to people who are abused and extends the statute of limitations. Common sense solutions. We have time
for one more question from either you or Dina or you, John. Do you have any outstanding question?
This is. I want to say it falls on the quality of life, but it really doesn't. Murphy has enacted legislation saying that wine sold in New York State needs to be sourced from New York. So what does that do to, let's say, a liquor store owner who wants to import wine from Italy or wine from Spain? Or how is that going to work? On one hand, it'll help the growers. But on the other hand, it kind of screws the guy who's trying to sell wine from Chile. You know,
if you follow the money train on that, I think he's received funding from some local wine merchants. I think that was more of a local home rule piece of legislation than it was a statewide piece of legislation.
Okay, so does that mean that wine enthusiasts will be safe in being able to go to the xenophiles. Thanks, John.
I would think so. I am not a drinking man myself, but I know people who buy wine from all over the world, and they continue to locally. I believe the legislation you're referring to was more of a local home rule.
And you have a lot of wineries in the Hudson Valley area,
absolutely,
too.
And New York State is promoting them as they should. It's great tourism. I understand it's great wine. There's great food. Craft beers in the Hudson Valley are exploding. It's great for the economy.
And Peter, who's on next week?
I'm drawing a blank right now.
Jeff Simmons?
Jeff Simmons is client, and I'm on like 3 hours sleep from last night, so I'm drawing a blank on who
You're forgiven. So that means you're going to have to tune in next week, folks, to find out who Peter's guest is.
And you've been listening to Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Duran, along with Ardina Seward and Peter Moses. And our special in-studio guest this week has been Peter Harckham, Democratic candidate for the 40th Senatorial District in New York State.
The National Yiddish Theater folks mine are going to be our guest next week.
Okay, you're redeemed.
I hope everybody has a great week. I hope the Red Sox beat the Yankees.
Oh, don't even go there. Don't even go there.
We're done.